guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the laundry room. The laundry room is being used for its designed purpose. There's laundry going. So if you hear that, I apologize. There's nothing I can do about it. Laundry needs to be done, and I need to do this video. So we're doing them at the same time. I'm also really congested today, and I also apologize for that in case I sound really nasally, although my voice is nasally anyway. But just in case. And I don't know what's going on with my hair. Final matter of business. And it's just out of control, and I apologize for that. And there's glare on my glasses. It's chaos. It's laundry room chaos. It's classic laundry room chaos. So if you're new to the channel, welcome and thank you for finding us. And I do thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, if you like Hong Kong cinema, all that other fun stuff that we talk about here, please do give us a sub and a thumbs up and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about this movie, what you think about this review, what Blu-rays you plan on buying in this totally insane year with so many films coming out. It's mind-boggling and very hard to keep up with. It's giving me a lot of anxiety trying to figure out how I'm going to review all these movies and get all these releases. Let's jump right into this video. We are talking about In the Line of Duty 3, Hell to the Yes, the Cynthia Khan starring third entry in the In the Line of Duty series, and the first one to actually have the In the Line of Duty title on it when they kind of retroactively decided to call these films a series. This was released in 1988, and we are talking about the Eureka Entertainment Blu-ray release, which is a March. I'm actually just grabbing my press release here so I can tell you the exact date. Thank you to Eureka for sending this to me so I have all the information in one spot. This is coming out in, I'm looking for the exact date here to give you. March 20th of 2023. And you know what's funny? I actually knew that because I'm planning the release of this video around that release date, and it just flew right out of my brain, and I apologize for that. So, like I said, it stars Cynthia Khan. You also see Michio Nishiwaki in this film, who is an amazing Japanese actor she's in a lot of these Girls with Guns movies, and this is very much a Girls with Guns film. It's, you know, the whole Girls with Guns thing really started with Yes, Madam, which is well, in terms of when it was released, the first film in this series, which starred Michelle Yeoh. And then there was Royal Warriors, and then there was this film. Royal Warriors, to me, is less of a Girls with Guns movie, even though Michelle Yeoh is in the lead. And it does have females, you know, in it, firing guns, kicking ass. But it's kind of more of just like a thriller to me. This is very much a Girls with Guns film. Hiroshi Fujioka, the Japanese actor in this, who's in Kamen Rider, is very famous for that. Melvin Wong, Dick Wise, Stuart Ong. And there are a ton of cameos in this film. It runs 88 minutes on the Blu-ray. It's officially listed, I think, at 84 minutes. That might be because the Fortune Star logo is the longest logo that has ever existed in the history of mankind, and it just goes forever. And it's limited to 2,000 units that come with the slipcase and with the booklet in it. So I'm going to give you a plot overview of this film. I'm going to give you like an in a nutshell review if you don't want to watch the whole review, so you can just get like a one sentence kind of idea of what this is. Then I'll go deeper into my thoughts on it, and then I will kind of review the bonus material that's on here. So the plot of this film is you have these two Japanese terrorists, essentially, who work for the Red Army, which is a communist army. And it's a little bit vague about which Red Army it is, because obviously there were a lot of those types of organizations around at that time in the late 1980s. You had Baader Meinhof, which is, you know, I think Red Army faction. Those are the same thing, right? And then you had the Red Army in China, and there was all these different things. So it's a little bit vague, but they're these essentially communist terrorists in Japan who stage this very audacious robbery, heist of a bunch of jewelry from a fashion show, and that scene is insane. There are people like swinging from the ceiling, firing machine guns, grenades, slaughter everywhere. Like, that scene is insane. It comes pretty early in the film, and it takes place in Tokyo. There's really cool location shooting in Tokyo here, and so they stage this audacious heist. A police officer dies, and his partner vows to get revenge on these terrorists. The terrorists go to Hong Kong. The partner goes to Hong Kong. He teams up with a Hong Kong cop, who is played by Cynthia Khan, and then they go after the bad guys, and that's basically the plot. So in a nutshell, if you don't want to watch this whole review, but you're thinking about getting this release, if you've never seen the film, if you don't really know what it is, this is a just like scuzzy-ass, violent, brutal, bloody, martial arts fighting everywhere, gunfighting everywhere, Girls with Guns movie. It's kind of like, there's kind of like Dirty Harry, Death Wish, 70s scuzzy exploitation movie kind of quality to it. It's not a film that's about like compassion and depth of character and like pacing the scenes perfectly and creating a mood. It's like, we are going to kill people, we're going to fight, there's going to be blood, there's going to be shooting. There's actually a pretty explicit sex scene in this movie. If you look at Hong Kong films in the 80s that were kind of more for mainstream audiences, obviously not like the more extreme stuff, but you didn't really have very explicit sex scenes. And there's a pretty graphic sex scene with like frontal female nudity and stuff in it. And it's a wild scene. I'll talk about that when I talk about my thoughts on the film. But, you know, I mean, if you're looking for just like a violent, super entertaining movie that moves like gangbusters, that's got shootouts, martial arts fighting, sex in the girls with guns genre, you can't go wrong with this movie. It doesn't have kind of the depth of character and the more introspective qualities, you know, the kind of high level craft, the filmmaking that you see in a movie like Royal Warriors, or, you know, if you want to go outside of this series, that you see in movies like Tiger Cage, the John Woo films, the Ringo Lam films. It's not on that level. It's much more of like a B movie, kind of pure straight ahead action film. So, to give you my thoughts on this movie, this is the first time I'd ever seen this movie. I had seen all of the fight scenes in this movie because they were on YouTube. Someone put all the fight scenes on YouTube. And I watched them years ago, and then I watched them again. I've seen them a couple times. But I had never seen the plot that stitched that together, so it's actually really cool to see. The locations in this film are freaking fantastic. This is the first thing I'll say. This is like an on-the-street movie where you see just like everyday Hong Kong. There's really cool footage of Tokyo. You know, I lived in Tokyo, so it's really cool to see that. And it's just, it gives you a really good grounded sense of like being on the street with these characters in that time, in that place, and the way it preserves kind of the atmosphere. There's this amazing scene in a graveyard in Tokyo where it's, you know, it's raining and it's foggy. And it's just a really tremendous sense of like being there. Like it creates a really strong atmosphere, I guess would be the best way to put that. The action in this movie is absolutely fantastic. Like I said, this movie it's not on the level of Royal Warriors. When I think of like the superlative craft of Royal Warriors, the incredible directing, the strength of the writing, the character work, the scene work, the acting, the pacing, the tone, like everything just fits perfectly together in that movie to make this amazing piece. This movie is much more just like go, 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 go. But you probably won't be spending time thinking about, oh, the characters aren't as good here. I don't quite understand the motivation as much when you're watching a movie in which there's a scene where someone literally throws a boat at somebody. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. There's a chain attached to the boat. The boat is whipped on a device. But like, that's the kind of movie this is. The final fight scene between, it's a three-way fight scene. That's what she said. Between Cynthia Khan, Michio Nishiwaki, and Dick Y, who's also in this film. That scene is just freaking bananas and amazing. And it's Arnav Enema actually kind of breaks down the editing in the commentary track here and talks about like how precise and fantastic the editing is to hit the rhythms of the fighting. And it's just such a great scene. It's brutal and it's bloody and it's just aggressive, and characters are dying and people are being burned, people are being shot and stabbed, and it's just like a savage movie. So you will be entertained from start to finish. And you might not have time to step back from it and think like, well, this isn't a movie that's on the level of like the best of these films. It's not John Woo, it's not Ringo Lam. Like I said, it's not Royal Warriors. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It's super, super entertaining. It's a very good Girls with Guns film. So, like I said, incredible locations. This movie moves like gangbusters. Now, if I'm going to put on my screenwriter brain and overanalyze it, there are two things to me that I would have done differently had I written this film, or if someone had asked me to read the script and give them notes on it or something like that. The first thing is that Cynthia Khan is essentially the protagonist of this film, at least on paper. She's on the cover of it and everything like that, right? She's like kind of the main selling point, and they were continuing the series of female-led action films, moving from Cynthia Khan to Michelle Yeoh, or rather, moving from Michelle Yeoh to Cynthia Khan. Cynthia Khan, by the way, is 20 in this movie. Like, her confidence, her ability to carry a movie, to be the center of it, to be like, she's incredible. She really is incredible for being that young and being able to carry this movie like that. But back to my point, I actually paused the movie at some point and checked. For the first 28 minutes of this movie, other than an opening action scene that she's involved in, she doesn't do anything active at all. She's just kind of hanging around. Now, you have this subplot where her boss is actually her uncle. And she's a cop, and her uncle wants to protect her from getting hurt because her mom died, and mom is his sister, and he wants to protect her. And like, I get that, but I feel like that could be one scene, and that tension could carry throughout the movie once she disobeys him or whatever. But it's really 28 minutes of her not doing anything, and so. And then at about 40 minutes in, the Japanese cop arrives in Hong Kong, and the relationship between them, the dynamics, and the way the movie just the last 40 minutes of this movie is just like you can't. I said this recently about I can't remember which movie, but another movie. But it's like listening to Slayer. Like if you know what I'm talking about, like when you listen to other bands, there's dynamics and there's pauses and there's quiet. But if you listen to like Prime Slayer, it's just like nonstop being punched in the face by riffs the whole time. Like the last 40 minutes of this movie is like that. It is just gangbusters, insane, nonstop action. I think you could have pushed the arrival of the Japanese cop in Hong Kong back like 10 or 15 minutes, or forward rather, in the film, and because there's just like there really is like 20 or so minutes of nothingness with the protagonist, and in that time the villains and the Japanese cop, who's kind of like a co-protagonist in a way, those characters are doing really interesting stuff, and the movie really risks you losing interest in the protagonist because the villain is doing a ton, the Japanese cop is doing a ton, and they're both way more interesting until the Cynthia Khan character is like activated, if you want to say that, and she gets involved in the action of the story, and then she becomes the focal point. She's very charismatic and stuff like that. So those are just kind of like nitpicks looking at this movie, but my bottom line is this is just a really, really freaking entertaining, violent, awesome action film. The other thing I want to talk about really quickly is the sex scene in this film. The sex scene in this film is nuts. There's choking, there's crying, there's blood drinking. It's like this kind of like S&M, like power dynamics of a relationship sex scene. It's between the two terrorist characters. And what is so fantastic about this scene to me is that it shows you both their intense attraction to and love for and need for one another, but at the same time how they are fundamentally very, very different people. And you see the sadness of the Michio Nishiwaki character, because she understands that even though she loves him, she is fundamentally different from him, and that may be irreconcilable. And what do you do in that situation? And this is all told through sex. There's like a couple lines of dialogue to set it up, and then it's just sex for like, I don't know, a minute, 45 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever it is. And in that time, through nothing is spoken, all through action, facial expressions, the way that the scene is shot. And by the way, they're both sweating like pigs. Everyone in this movie is sweating like a pig the whole time. I don't know if it was shot on like the hottest days of the year, or maybe they would do like a bunch of takes and then they would use the last take so everyone was all sweaty. But like so many people in so many scenes in this movie are just sweating like pigs. Anyway, so they're glistening. The guy just got out of the shower. Okay, fine. It makes sense that he's glistening. I don't quite know why Michio Nishiwaki is glistening, but she is. And so there's the sex scene, and just like, you know, in a movie like this, that's kind of like a B movie, that's definitely, this movie is selling action, it's selling violence, it's selling sensation. Sex is sensation. When you go to the movies to be titillated by violence, you probably also like to be titillated by sex, right? And so you have these, you know, very attractive naked people having sex. Everyone's sitting in the dark watching it like, ooh, this is fun. But you're articulating really great character information through this kind of tantalizing, salacious thing. It's very smart, really good filmmaking. I thought that scene really stood out to me. So the bonus material on here is you have two commentary tracks, one from Frank Jing and one from Mike Leader and Art of Enema, and then there's the trailers and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk to you. Oh, and I haven't mentioned the booklet yet. Booklet is by James Oliver. It's actually a really cool essay. I can use this to kind of dovetail into Frank's commentary. James Oliver talks about kind of the backstory behind this movie, how it came to be, why Cynthia Khan is in it instead of Michelle Yeoh, the trajectory of Cynthia Khan's career, and then looking at kind of analyzing this movie, how these films were sold overseas, how the In the Line of Duty films became a series on paper, like Michelle Yeoh's name, and how, you know, so she was Michelle Khan at some point. Cynthia Khan is called Cynthia Khan because Khan from Michelle Khan, who is Michelle Yeoh, and Cynthia from Cynthia Rothrock, so there was like, they were combining those two names. And it's a very interesting essay that does a really good job of contextualizing the film historically. Now, Frank also talks about why Cynthia Khan takes over for Michelle Yeoh. Michelle Yeoh was retiring in 1988 when this film came out. And if you know, you already know why. It's a pretty famous story. I don't want to spoil it for you. If you're planning on getting this release, it'll be more fun to read it in the essay and hear it from Frank about why she was retiring and the trajectory of her career and stuff like that. You may already know this if you have the police story release from Eureka, because I believe people talk about it on there, because Super Cop 3 was her return from retirement. after she was retired for about 3 years. But it's a really interesting story. And Frank talks about connections to other films. So Cynthia Khan actually plays this same character in an other film series. So Frank talks about that, and he talks about the other In the Line of Duty films, because it keeps going past the 4 that are coming out on Blu-ray right now. There's a 5th one that Cynthia Khan is in, and then he talks about the other films in that series. He kind of goes over Cynthia Khan's whole life. Like, she doesn't act anymore. He talks about what happened to her after she stopped acting and all that stuff. And she's relatively young, because she was only 20 in this movie, right? So this movie is 35 years old this year. So then she would be 55, right? Which is really not even that old, ultimately. You can think about other people who were in Hong Kong films in that era. Jackie is, late 60s, early 70s. I think Sammo's in his 70s now. Like, these people are getting old, and she's still in her mid-50s. So, and then, so this is one thing I wanted to touch upon with Frank's commentary that I really thought was super cool. He talks about how big Miami Vice was in Hong Kong. And he talks about where you can see the obvious Miami Vice influence on this movie, which I never in a million years would have picked up on, partly because I was like very young when Miami Vice was out, and I only kind of vaguely remember it. I haven't gone back and watched any of the DVD or Blu-ray releases. I just remember seeing like a couple episodes on TV when I was a kid, and like the Don Johnson's kind of like style with the hair, and like he would wear the t-shirt and like the suit coats and stuff like that. But I don't remember a ton about that show. So I never would have picked up on that. And it's super, super cool to kind of have that information. And then, so to get into the Mike and Arna commentary, I mean, they talk about, one of the things I loved about this commentary is they talk about the locations, but not just in the way that people usually talk about locations in commentaries, which is that, that's here, it's on this island, it's in this place, it's that kind of stuff. They talk about what it's like to actually be in those locations, which is super cool. You're like, there's a mall in here, or like there's one place where they shoot that's near like a little shopping mall, and there's a huge sign inside the shopping mall that says, don't buy bootlegs, and there's like a big picture of a police officer, but the whole mall is filled with bootleg stuff. Like, just like stuff like that. That's just such great detail about what it's like to like be there on the ground. And like I said, Arna analyzes the editing in the final fight, which is super cool. Mike Leader knows the guy who plays the villain, and he talks about him. And then they talk about the other movies that guy has been in. He was in some like sleazy ass, like very sexual category 3 films. Frank also talks about this. The titles of those movies, I was like laughing out loud. They are so preposterous. One of everyone talks about Michio Nishiwaki and her kind of the trajectory of her career. One of the things that Mike and Arna say that I thought was really interesting is that she was famous not just for being a female bodybuilder, which was she was like the first female bodybuilding champion in Japan, I believe, but also for the fact that she was still very much feminine, and she made a big point out of the fact that you can be an athlete and be very powerful and strong and do these things that we traditionally associate with masculinity or male athletes and still be feminine. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of insight into who she is as a person and kind of how she rose to prominence and stuff like that. So just great commentary tracks. I mean, if you're a fan of Girls with Guns, or if you're not, if you don't know, kind of, if you're a fan of Girls with Guns, I think this is a good movie to pick up. It's violent. It's exciting. It's super entertaining. I mean, that's just kind of it in a nutshell. It's very simple. If you like action films, you'll like this film. So go and get it. My name is Wills, Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.